When Lasswell and Rain's EX jobs came in the JP side, I advocated for Rain being by far the best of the two EX jobs. We've seen quite a bit of Rain so far, and I still stand by that point today. I believe Lasswell has a couple issues that hold him back from being a top tier unit. He is competitive and he has a lot of strengths, but a couple weaknesses that are really crippling in my opinion in today's meta. But today we'll talk about his stats, his EX upgrades, how to build him, where he'll shine, whether he's a good investment or not, and what I think those weaknesses are. So let's go ahead. Lasswell's role is more of a duelist. He's a guy that hits really hard, really fast, and then he uses Mirage to negate the first hit coming onto himself so that he can win a 1v1 scenario. That's really where he shines the most. He's tricky to take out because he has some evasion and that one-hit damage immunity, but he's generally held back by the fact that he has a very short range, and it's very hard to build a proper evasion ice unit right now because there's a ton of really good ice vision cards for offense, not a lot for evasion. So he's kind of a mid-size evasion unit. He'll dodge a couple hits, but he won't be as hard to hit as a maxed out, say, Yuar Zazan or to be in an evasion setup. That is not what he's designed to do. Lasswell also suffers from mobility issues with move 3 jump 1. He is a Dragoon, he could use Dragoon standard to move to move 4 jump 2, but the issue is Odo really doesn't use that so much, or you have to turn off a couple really important abilities for that to happen, so it's more of a manual trick that you can use. And then if you are using the Dragoon sub job, you lose access to illusion from the Samurai sub, so your evasion side is a little bit weaker as well. If we look at Lasswell's stats, he is very comparable to Be in that he has basically the same amount of HP, just a little bit less attack, the same agility, but he has a bit less luck, and he doesn't have a master ability that gives him evasion. He also doesn't have access to Be's crazy VC that gives her luck and luck up in a percentage. In an ice physical setup, I believe you often want to just go for the offense because the VCs are so good, so you likely won't have Secrets of the Heart or Shiva to increase Lasswell's evasion. He will not be as sturdy or hard to take out as Be is. He is also a human, so is affected by Maneater and doesn't have any innate defense, so don't expect him to be as hard to kill as what Be has. And then if you compare him to somebody like Velric, well, Lasswell will obviously hit harder, he's got more attack, he's got more agility, but he doesn't have nearly as much HP or the defense, so Velric is much more of a bruiser than what Lasswell could be. If I were to look at the stats from 99 to 120, I think you could conceivably stop at 115. He gains the most of his stats. You will lack on quite a bit of attack though, and Lasswell being an attacker mostly, that might cripple you a little bit. The 120 ability is good for one of the two archetypes that you could run Lasswell into, but we'll talk about that in a second. If you don't want to run him as an evasion support unit, then you could do without the 120, and he would still perform fairly well, I think. The first of Lasswell's ability upgrades is Blade Flash Awakened. It used to be only castable in the line, but now he can do it in a diamond-shaped pattern, which is a lot easier to land. It has happened to me in a couple manual matches where my Lasswell could just not land the attack because of some height issues and whatnot in a line, and if I had access to that diagonal, that would have allowed me to hit. And since this ability decreases ice resistance, in an ice party it sets up your next partner, or it also sets up Lasswell for his next attack. If you notice the order, it decreases resistance after dealing damage, so the second use of this ability will also deal more damage than the first because you've already reduced the enemy's defense. So he also gets an upgrade in the percentage, so now it's a 210 mod, which makes it a very heavy hitting ability even if you haven't decreased the enemy's ice resistance. That is especially good for the AI because now that it has such a high mod, there's a pretty good chance you'll see it use it often, which is one of Lasswell's best abilities. The second upgrade though is kind of You get a third cast of Mirage. Now, you've probably seen Lasswell in a couple fights. When does he ever use his second Mirage? Basically never, so he won't use the third either. And then if I'm in the thick of a fight with an enemy, so many characters right now have a multi-hit attack that Mirage isn't all that important anymore. It used to be really good when Lasswell was released because there weren't any units basically with barrier breaks, and most units only had like single hit attacks, so it actually saved you from an entire action from an enemy. Now, try to use that in front of Cloud. If he has access to Ascension, he'll use that and he'll just kill you through the barrier because he'll destroy it before dealing damage. Otherwise, he'll use triple slash and only the first one of 3 hits will be negated by Mirage. Same goes for all the snipers with their barrier breakers and etc. Right now, if I was playing in a manual setup, I would much prefer using something like Mashari's TMR and giving him a 3 times 35% barrier than using a 1 time 100% barrier, because it's really easy to get around if you're a human, and the AI also knows how to get around it, so they will naturally use the move that does that. So I don't know, it used to be great. Right now it feels kind of weak. Even then, you will fight a Black Witch, for example, she'll just use Devastation, break your Mirage, and then kill you through it. So it's not as good as an ability as it used to be. Seeing an upgrade there, I don't see a lot of value in that. Now, his new ability I think is very interesting, especially if you're pairing Lasswell with other evasion units, because if that's the case, you probably have Circus of the Heart and what it takes to make him very evadey, and landing a blind on top is usually the difference between your enemy having like 20% chance to hit you and going all the way down to 0. Even if you're not running a full evasion team, it will make it a little bit more reliable that he dodges a couple hits, so that's good, but you will likely never run Lasswell at more than a 50 faith, which means that his chance of actually landing the blind will be very low, so it's kind of a fun bonus if it lands, but don't rely on that entirely for your game plan. What I like the most about this ability is the fact that it's a cross-shaped pattern, which he does not have in his main job, so if you wanted that pattern before, you needed to run Lasswell as a Knight of Grenshell sub job, which locked you out of having either Illusion or Dragoon Standard, so 2 very critical abilities in his kit. So I think it's a great upgrade just because of the attack pattern. The blind is good if you're pairing him with other evasion units, I think, or if you're lucky enough to land it, but don't, again, rely on that because it's just not a good chance to win. Here's a sample build, and as per usual, I did not put any other friendly vision cards, but knowing Fenrir with a 50% attack up, or Starlit Tryst, or a lot of these other great VCs that we have for Ice, you could imagine a lot more stats on Lasswell. So in this current setup, he has 5400 HP, 1185 attack, which is super high, and 96 agility. If you were running Fenrir, he would go to 1380 attack, which is kind of insane, and then with Freezes, for example, he goes over 6000 HP. He's still rather squishy though, 10 defense, 20 spirit is not that great, so against a lot of attacks he will go down in one hit if he doesn't have Mirage up. And as I said, there's so many units with barrier breaker abilities in the game right now that there are many ways to get around his Mirage. He will still hit really hard though, he has a ton of good abilities, and he sets himself up from one turn to the other by reducing ice resistance and then coming even harder with potentially Fatal Bloom in melee range. So he's still a very, very competent attacker. I would pair him with characters like Gilgamesh, right? Gilgamesh goes in, reduces slash resist, Lasswell comes in, reduces ice resistance, and if your enemy is not dead yet, your next attack is basically sure to finish them off. I don't know why I have Salir in there. I intended the Valentine version of Salir, which is an ice unit that can benefit from his ice resistance down, but I guess we have the normal version right there. And then anybody, as I was saying earlier, that is an evasion unit, if you manage to get the blind, that's going to be very good, and they also will benefit from the same vision cards, because Lasswell can get relatively evady if you try to go for an evasion build. So a partner like Vinera, a partner like Tabi, depending on which card you use to get the luck up, will be great partners for him. Characters you would want to avoid: Kingmont. Has the barrier breaker, has AoE slash resistance down, can potentially berserk you, is very accurate, so your evasion won't matter all that much. Just not a good character to fight for Lasswell. Somebody like Zazan, who's a great duelist, is a better duelist, I believe, than Lasswell. So Zazan has courage and fake death, is even more evady, even more tanky, and deals similar damage. So in the end, I'm pretty sure Lasswell will lose this duel very often. So if they kind of set off in each of their corner of the map and face each other, I'm banking on Zazan winning the duel. And then, as I put, anybody with a good barrier break, guaranteed hit attacks, or multi-hit attacks will deal with Lasswell very well. Cloud has all 3 of those, but be wary of snipers, ninjas. There's a lot of options that can deal with Lasswell's main way of survivability. So, overall, is he worth it? Well, he is a great ice enabler. There aren't that many units right now that do ice resistance down and that are still relevant in today's meta. I don't see a lot of Medienas or Rosas, so Lasswell is one of those guys that can have decent survivability, deals super heavy damage, while also setting your other guys up for more damage in further turns. He can also enable evasion if he uses illusion or blind. He's accurate and deadly and fast, and the ice VCs are super strong to support him to do that job. But he has mobilities and range issues, like 3 and 1, 3 move jump 1, max 4 range on his longest range abilities unless he's a Dragoon, and then as I said, Mirage is a gamble because there's so many units in the game that can remove it that you can't really rely on it that much. As I said earlier, if I have the choice between that and a 3 times 35% barrier, which is kind of the standard for barriers that are given by TMRs, I will take the multi-hit barrier over Mirage 9 times out of 10. So my intention is to EX Lasswell. I've been using him a lot in the past if you've seen other videos, either as an evasion unit, as a Dragoon, as a CM unit paired with Fryevias. I've done a lot of stuff with him. I want to take him to the next level with EX jobs, but I'm still on the fence on whether I should recommend him for other players, because I don't think he will be as good a unit in auto as people might expect. So I'm not that sure. You guys let me know what you think and whether you're going to EX him or not. But that was it. Hopefully you found it interesting, learned a thing or two. If you did, please like and subscribe. And then as per usual, guys, thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.